living on my friend's couch, no income, 40 grand of credit card debt, credit score gone. Repo man literally came and took my car. I could easily have gone the excuse route. It's always a lack of resourcefulness, never a lack of resources. And so people need to figure out what they want and then commit to it. Like when people create excuses of why they can't succeed, I just go, brother, you're talking to the guy. I could have created all the excuses, right?
Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of Easy Pay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million.
Today, Brad Weimert, host of Beyond $1 Million, is interviewing Justin Colby. If you don't know who Justin is, you might be familiar with his podcast, The Entrepreneur DNA, which is currently one of the top 10 business podcasts in the nation. This episode is packed with real estate investing strategies and other advice. Whether you are an established business person hoping to upgrade your skills, or you are brand new and just trying to figure it out, this episode is a must watch. You'll learn the tactics Justin uses to raise capital, some of which can be used even if you have no money, the wholesale strategy he teaches his students to generate cash flow quickly, and how he hit the top 10 spot for podcasts in the nation, and the key elements he used to get there, which, by the way, you can implement for any type of digital content or personal brand, and so much more. Here's episode 111 with Justin Colby.
Justin Colby, what's happening, man?
What's up, brother?
I have never talked to you about business at all. Well, no, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But I know you socially. I see you all over the place. And I'm now finding you in Miami at this studio that you have highlighted for me.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming out, man.
Dude, this is a blast. Even the last handful of minutes we were chatting, I'm finding out more about you than I knew. And it's easy to socialize, right? And kind of bro out with someone, and then getting undercover and under their history is kind of cool to learn. So
my favorite way to meet people is with no business context.
Sure.
Because there's no presupposition. Now, there's a qualifier there, which is that in certain rooms that you're in, you know that people are performers by nature.
Yeah.
And I like that. And then I like not knowing anything.
Yeah.
Because then you get to know the person.
You know, it's funny. I hate to say it, but it's just the reality. The socialization of being at a bar. You and I are part of similar masterminds. But again, we're always kind of socializing. We're never really talking business. Mm-hmm. That whole aspect really, to me, creates a lot of connectivity.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't need to go drink and I'm not saying you got to go take shots and blackout drunk. I'm just saying like that social connection starts everything. And that's where it goes. And that's why we're here. Right. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah. Speaking of, we're both living in sort of sober January land, kind of. And I'm violating my rule and having a drink.
There you go.
And you are staying strong, which I appreciate. So on to business.
Yeah. People
know you for real estate and stuff. What I have dug into and found out is that since you started, you have done more than 2,500, 2,600 transactions in the last 15, 16 years.
Yep.
Which is wild. So I want to kind of get up to that point. But before we get there, can you give me kind of foundation, how you got into business, how you started?
So the story goes, it was painful. So when the market crashed back in 2007, 2008.
That's when you got in?
So did I. I crashed hard.
Yep.
So I was a realtor prior to that. So I graduated UCLA, never went out and got a job, went directly into sales. And that sales career, which was my business, moved me to Boston, Massachusetts. It was door-to-door sales.
Nice.
Great skill set, selling business services. So it was door-to-door businesses, right?
Oh.
Credit card processing.
Look at you.
Eagle First was the company.
Nice.
UPS, Verizon, wireless, that kind of stuff, right? And so I caught pneumonia because I'm a California boy, born and raised in the Bay Area. And so I literally I went to the doctor because I was so sick so long that I'm like, yikes, not great. So the doctor was like, dude, full blown pneumonia. You have a couple choices. Like you need several weeks of bed rest, or you could probably take a week or so in here and we'll kind of pump you through whatever. I'm like, I have no health insurance. So that's not going down. Long story short, fast forward, move back home. My buddy calls at the same time. He had no idea and says, hey, do you want to start this real estate brokerage we talked about in college? Yes, I do. Because I just gave up my sales company. Got into real estate. His dad was a home developer. I literally would sell his new home builds I call it like I was a monkey. I would sit behind a desk. I would take all the offers and I would just choose the highest one. I had no skill set. I had no training. I had no salesmanship. I didn't know how to build a book of business. I had nothing. I just knew I was making a lot of money because of this. Right time, right place. No skill set, which is part of why I've built such a big education platform, because I realize people can make a lot of money, but if they don't have a skill set to lean back on in tougher times, they just fall and crash. So,
all right, hold on. I got to ask you some questions on this. So, the being door-to-door B2B, first of all, and then moving into real estate, it sounds like there wasn't a ton of deliberate thought behind this. You said right time, right place.
Zero. Right time, right place. I mean, literally, I was at my aunt and uncle's house, right?
Yep.
In bed. I get a text, hey, you ready to get going on this real estate thing? Because we talked about it a lot in college, right? His dad was a developer.
Okay.
Hey, bro, when we graduate, we should do this, blah, 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 right? And he has no idea I'm home because I'm like bedridden. I'm really ill. Like I'm 6'4". Right now, I probably weigh 205. I was like 160.
Wow.
I was not great.
So, okay. So my question here is B2B, door to door, B2B versus B2C anyway, from a sales perspective, is very different.
Yeah, very.
Did you gravitate towards one or the other? Did you find yourself in a position where you felt like you were getting success somewhere? Because you said you're order taking basically.
Well, the order taking was in the real estate.
Yep.
So when I broke into that was just a function of my buddy's dad was a developer.
Yeah.
And they needed sales agents at the
easy leaned in. How did you do in the B2B thing?
I was great. The challenge in the B2B is you got to build a real business and build a team and an infrastructure and a daily routine, right? So interestingly enough, it's super like boiler room, right? Where it's you come in the morning early, you get raw, let's go win, fight, crawl, scratch, right? Let's go create, and the motivation to get out of the door. And then all the salespeople go out of the door, knock 100 doors a day. You're looking for one sign up a day, right? These are the metrics, right? And you're getting paid like $100 as a commission, $100 one time as a sales rep. And you do credit card processing. So you know the money that goes into it. And then Eagle First would pay us $100.
Wow.
One time to get a new client.
Wow.
I mean, great for Eagle First. But so that skill set didn't translate into me being a realtor at the time, because I literally would sit behind a desk as a realtor and people would be giving me like 10 offers, 15 offers a day, because it's back in 2006. The market's on fire, free money everywhere. If you had a heartbeat, you were getting a loan.
Right.
So the transition of skill set didn't transition. I today probably use more of that skill set than I did then, right? But as the market crashed, I crashed. And so this was effectively kind of my second crash, right? So I gave up my sales business because can't really sell a door-to-door. Who wants to buy that, right? The owner's leaving, he's dying, right? Technically, health issues. So gave it up. I was making like $500,000 a year, early 20s, like way too much money.
Really?
Oh man, we were good, right? But it's way too much money for a 22-year-old out of college to be making, right?
It's too much money if you haven't been taught what to do with it and how to behave. Right. And we have such a crazy lack of financial literacy in our educational systems, right? In the institutions that teach our kids, that yes, when you're 22 and you make $500,000, it's problematic more than helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I come from a very middle-class family, never wanted much, but never really had much, just normal, right? And so I had no education behind it. And so don't have anything to show for it, of course. Vegas has it all. So then I go into that, again, kind of fast forward, didn't build a skill set around being an agent. So I couldn't, when the market did crash, instead of like relying on my book of business and clients, I had nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to canvas territory to go generate new clients. Like I just had nothing. But I did love real estate. I just didn't know if I wanted to be like a chauffeur, if you will. And for all the realtors out there, I apologize. But it just wasn't my thing to kind of like cater all the time. But it was just when like the very first show of like Flip This House, I think, with Than and the boys, I think it was just about this time.
Yeah. They were clients in their heyday for us too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, gangster.
So I don't think anything I had to make a decision on what I wanted to do. And I was broke. I lost it all. Home to foreclosure. Repo man took my car, sleeping on a couch. I'm 25 years old. Right. And I was like, what do I do? But I loved real estate. And obviously everyone was well aware of the millionaires and billionaires that have real estate and portfolios, et cetera. I'm like, I just think real estate's the move. And at that time, I was invited to one of those big seminars, Fortune Builders.
Oh, nice. It was a Fortune Builder seminar.
Yeah,
nice.
Absolutely. And it was the one with Preston Ely launching his whatever it was he did.
Freedom Soft.
Yeah.
Crazy. Small world, man.
Yeah. Yeah. This is way back in the day. And so, listen, I was broke, but the event did the trick, meaning it got me to where I needed to be. I made a call to a friend, said, hey, I need to borrow $25,000 for some coaching. I have none of it. And he took a bet on me and said, all right, dude, I trust you. I believe you can go do it. Cut a $25,000 check. I gave it to them, and away I was at, right? And that was it. And that was the trajectory of 16 years later, here I am on your podcast. And so there's a lot in the middle there.
Sure.
But to keep it short is I came from when people create excuses of why they can't succeed, I just go, brother, you're talking to the guy. I could have created all the excuses, right? Living on my friend's couch, no income, 40 grand of credit card debt, credit score gone. Repo man literally came and took my car, foreclosed on, I had it all. I could easily have gone the excuse route. And so it's always a lack of resourcefulness, never a lack of resources. And so people need to figure out what they want and then commit to it, right? And so I have kind of 5 principles I rely on. The first 2 is decide what you want and who you need to be to get it, and then commit to it. And if you do that, you take a lot of action around that and you can build something special.
I feel like that was 2 principles. What are the other 3?
Oh, yeah. The other 3. So the first one is almost 2 in 1, but decide what you want and who you need to be to get it. Right.
Yeah.
So I combine that. Number 2 is then you got to commit to that thing.
Yeah.
So you got to decide what the hell you want. That's not easy. That's not
it's not.
Hey, Brad, what do you want? Oh, I want to, you don't flippantly say, I want to be the biggest credit card processor in the world, right? That may be your goal, but you don't just flippantly say that.
Right.
Because then who Brad needs to be to get to that level would probably not be the Brad right here, right now, because you would be a lunatic at that point. You'd have to be like an Elon Musk.
Yep.
So I say that to say, then you got to go commit to that. What do you want? And then the breaking point is taking the action needed to achieve it. So number 3 is taking a lot of action. Break shit. Do it wrong. Do it wrong enough, long enough to learn what the right thing is to do. You're going to fuck it up along the way. It's not going to go well. You're going to make mistakes. Shit's going to break. Cool. Go do that. Right? There's no other way to do it. Number 4 is be extremely uncomfortable, because every day that you're doing something new, you should be uncomfortable because it's new. So by definition, you're going to be outside your comfort zone because you've never done it before. Right? So I know that sounds obvious, but I think it's a limiting factor belief that people don't want to do that, but they want something new. And I'm like, then just be uncomfortable. We don't, deal with it, right? Just deal with it. And then number 5, in my opinion, I believe this is the most important one. So I call it, I got to come up with a better name, but you got to remove your time result expectations. So time result expectations. So when are you going to achieve it? People put some stupid arbitrary time on shit. It's always arbitrary because it's a round number. Even goals, I think, fuck a 5-year goal, 10-year goal, yearly goal. Goals should be changed personally. But to talk about the time result, so in my space of real estate, when someone comes into my community at the Science of Flipping, the first thing they think is, okay, I'm going to get a deal in 30 days because Justin's coaching me and the community's helping, right? Is it possible? 100%. But I basically, if I ever have the chance to enroll someone, they somehow get to me directly and they say, I want to get a deal done the first 30 days, I won't allow them into a role. Which sounds counterintuitive because it's a business to create income. But I know that on day 31, they will quit, they will complain, and they will blame me for why they didn't. They will not look in the mirror because that's our human condition now. It's easier to point the finger and blame than it is to actually look in the mirror and say, oh, it's actually because I didn't make any calls, right? That's the hard part.
Yeah.
And so your time expectation on the result you're trying to achieve shouldn't be any. So I've been very vocal recently about becoming a billionaire. I will become a billionaire. And then I paused, just like I did, looking you dead in the eye. because I didn't say when or how fast. I just said, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Now, if it takes me 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever, so be it. I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to create that, specifically me through real estate, in a fun new little ventures. I'm getting into tech, which I didn't know I was going to get in tech, but that's a side story we're going to talk about here. But
I have lots of feedback.
And by the way, if I don't achieve becoming a billionaire and I get halfway there,
you'll be okay.
Doing okay. If I get a quarter way there, I'm not so pissed.
All right. So I have a question on that.
Yeah.
So I understand the construct, and the reality for me with goal setting and timelines is very often I don't meet them on time, but I meet them. And I look back on life and track the activities, track the behaviors, and see that a lot of shit just happened. Yeah. But it only happened because I put the goal out there in the first place and aimed for it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this shoot for the stars, hit the moon thing, or whatever that analogy is.
Yeah. It's one or the other.
Something like that.
I don't know what's farther. I guess the stars are farther. Shoot for stars, land on the moon. There you go.
Yeah, something like that. But the question is, how do you reconcile that idea of it's not about the timeline with still having enough pressure and constraints to execute quickly?
So that's a little bit the entrepreneur part, right? Where it is a lot easier to be an employee.
Yes.
No real goals. The boss says you need to achieve this thing. You just work until you achieve it. And they tell you what you need to achieve. So you don't have to think or push or whatever. You just got to get it done. Okay. What we do and how, it's a great question for like the military or entrepreneurs. It's like, how do you create the energy, the desire, the commitment? It's because you got to go back to number one. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to create? What is that? Right. So if we're talking about goals, whatever that may be, okay, that's what I want. Who do I need to be to get that? What do I need to be saying? Where do I need to be? Who do I need to meet? Right? How much do I need to work? What do I need to be focused on? Who do I need to be? And if you can create that type of thing, that's why committing and taking action on the next two is because there's a little something wrong with us entrepreneurs to set goals the way we set them, because now we have to go do them. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's why not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. It's fucking hard. Really hard. Like it's more dog shit sandwiches than it is medals and rewards.
No question about it.
And so for people, all I can say is you really need to connect the what do I want and who do I need to be to get it. I'm not going to go the West Coast woo-woo, what's your why? Right? Because I feel like at this point that's so watered down. Like everyone answers the same thing. It's my kids and creating a legacy. Fine. What do you really want out of this life? Like I kind of reverse engineer. We only have one of these fucking lives. This is it. This is not practice. We have one time. What do I want? Like for some, playing mediocre is okay. I don't judge that person. It's not for Brad and it's not for Justin.
Yeah.
Right?
I do a little bit, but keep going.
Well, sure. But you're already in the 1%.
Yeah. I say that somewhat playfully because I don't think judgment's bad, right? For me, I would judge myself. I do judge myself when I land in the space of mediocrity.
But you and I that's what I'm saying. We're wired different.
Yes.
I don't think this is...
I guess I don't look... I guess what I would say is, yes, we're wired different. And I choose to look at Gen Pop as not mediocre, but as long as they're living deliberately, which most aren't, do whatever the fuck you want.
That's right.
The people that clock in at 8 and leave at 5, staff, and cherish the time after 5 where they're totally disconnected. I love and respect that if it's a choice. But when it's not a choice, then it's mediocrity. When it's not a choice and they're not controlling their own life and making the decision, that's what I judge.
So I just don't... The only thing I don't like about any of it is when people complain about it.
That's
right.
Same,
Even if
same
it's
thing,
not a choice.
Right, parallel.
I think it's all a choice, frankly.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I would sit here and say, even those people who say they don't have a choice, have a choice. They're making a choice to not make a choice.
Sure. Not making a decision is making a decision.
That's it. And so I would just say, like, sometimes I say, honey, I'm going to turn into Tom Cruise in cocktails and I'm going to the beach to serve drinks because I'm done. I'm at, right? Because like no brains, no headaches.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to live in a 1-bedroom studio apartment on the beach in some Tahiti or something. And we won't have all the cool things, but I don't have to, like every night I get to come home and just sit with you guys and play and whatever. Right. So that's okay because it's a choice to do it.
Right.
We need to be able to understand that everyone has the same and I just got in a dialogue, let's call it, about this. Because I think it is all a choice and everyone does have the same opportunity. I'm not saying everyone has as much money or whatever, and we could go as polarizing as we want to talk about, right? Do the people in Haiti have the same opportunity as people in the United States? I'm not necessarily going there. But I would argue if you were born in the United States, in large part, we all have the same opportunity. In large part, right?
Yeah,
we just have to make a decision to go do it. Go after it. Go for the thing you want and don't allow society to limit us. Like, it's just not easy. That's the challenge, is like whether it's the judgment or the societal disagreement of the way you want to do it or whatever, that, like, it's just not the easy thing to do. So you got to push through that part.
Yeah, I mean, there are booby traps all over the place with language around this.
Of course.
But
I try to be as even keel on how I say what I'm going to say.
I generally steer clear of absolutes.
Yeah.
But if we want to stick with this frame, I would say everybody has the same opportunities, but they just have different starting conditions. And so there are more hurdles for many people to get to that opportunity, to get to that starting line than others.
That's right.
But you have a choice as a human of whether or not you're going to take ownership of that and push through anyway or not. And that's the truism, right? That's the absolute, is ultimately it's still fucking up to you.
Yeah. And as a person, I actually am very accepting of all, meaning I wasn't trying to be polarizing there. I'm just saying it is just a choice. That's the thing I do believe. If you choose not to, awesome. I love you. I'll hug you. I'll support you. Just don't fucking complain.
All right. So let's pull it back to real estate here. So you go through a Fortune Builders course.
Yep.
And you magically get rich.
Magic. It's like it falls off the tree and you go, yes.
Beyond a Million is brought to you by Easy Pay Direct. If you're an entrepreneur and you are still using a product like Stripe or PayPal to accept payments, it is time to find out why the largest names in your industry would never consider doing that. Check out easypaydirect.com/BAM to find out more.
So tell me about, from a real estate investment perspective, I want to talk info and I want to talk real estate investment. But let's start with real estate investment because that's where you started. And that's where good people that are selling education on real estate always start.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know how to do it, how the fuck are you going to teach it?
That's right.
Not well is the answer.
That's right.
So what kind of real estate investment? Why did you pick that specific thing?
Yeah.
And what was the path there?
So I went path of least resistance. So I lived in San Francisco on a couch. And the Bay Area still to this day is largely one of the more expensive places to buy real estate, right?
Sure.
And so I understood, like, if I'm broke, it's really hard to kind of whittle your way into saying, yeah, I'd like to make an offer on this $4.8 million home that is 3,000 square feet. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So during that time, Phoenix was just getting destroyed with values, right? And so my friend and business partner, we decided to go into business together to say, because he was losing his job too at KB Homes. He had a job. And we're like, why don't we do this investing thing in Phoenix? Because these homes now are like $50,000. They used to be like $200,000.
Wow.
Just got decimated. Lower barrier of entry. Now, we didn't even have the $50,000. But the point being is the value could make it a little bit easier to find people with $50,000.
Yeah. To get into it. And this is just post collapse. So this is
8, 9,
10. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And so I went into single family homes, and I still do a lot of single family homes still to this very day. I'll personally buy anywhere from 2 to 5 homes a week currently right now. We just closed on a 22-door apartment complex last week. So I'm getting more into commercial. I just bought a 584-door in Houston, Texas with some partners, which is really cool. So I am getting more into the commercial side. I have a storage facility now that I bought in last year, but I still love single family. And here's why, is we're recording this right now, the big boy money, Blackstone just came in with some huge number. Don't quote me exactly, but something like 1.3 billion, I think, might even be more, to go buy out another hedge fund that had 38,000 single family homes under management.
Damn.
Why would they do that? Because they believe in the single family home model. They realize population is growing faster in home building. Everyone will need a place to live. People prioritize or prefer, I guess, single family homes. And so they went out and spent all that money to go get 38,000 single family homes in one purchase. So for me, I go, let me just follow the money. Because if they're not going down more apartments, which they are, but if they're also veering into the single family, I'm going to stay in single family too. Right? Because I would love for them to come buy my portfolio one day soon. Right? And it's not 38,000 homes. I don't have that. So, if they're willing to do that, I kind of just follow the money. Now, with all that said, I'm 16 years into this business, right? There's ebbs and flows and iterations and adaptations of what I've done and how I've done it. There was a time that I only fixed and flipped. That's the only thing I did, right? There was a time I only wholesaled. There was a time those are the only two other. And then over the last several years, I realized my biggest mistake was not losing multiple seven figures on a development. I've lost millions of dollars. I am not afraid to share it. I'm vocal about it. And the reason being is because people need to realize it's not always puppy dogs and rainbows. It's not always look how cool I look on Instagram. It's not all of that. It is the real deal is like I've taken some big swings at the bat and I've lost and I've missed. I've missed big, but it doesn't stop me, right? It didn't stop. I could have easily folded, right? That's it. I'm out. I'm going to go Tom Cruise cocktails on a beach, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't because I committed to what I wanted within investing. So I say all that to now say like now where I'm at and what I try to coach and educate people on is to be a dynamic real estate investor. Do it all. Wholesale, fix and flip, and buy rentals, right? You should always be building a portfolio. My number one mistake was I didn't build a portfolio. I was not at least accumulating one home a year, for the first 15-year-old, technically the first 12 years of my business. Now I'm 16 years in and now 3 years ago, I started really buying more rentals.
All right. So that's the part I want to talk about. So you just mentioned 3 strategies, but all within single family, fix and flip, wholesale, buy and hold.
That's it.
And this is a really important key for people that are looking at real estate investment as a vehicle, whether it's a vehicle for wealth creation or cash flow. You still were siloed at that point in time in one asset class.
That's right.
So different strategies, one asset class, not to be confused with do any type of real estate investment that presents itself across all these different asset classes.
That's right.
Which is horrifically more complicated.
Amen. I was just going to say that.
It's a really important note because it could easily be misinterpreted when you say be dynamic.
Right.
So you also mentioned that you had a period of time when you were doing fix and flip, period of time just wholesaling. What was the path there? So when you started, what did you get out of Fortune Builders and where did you start? Wholesaling or
fix and flip?
Flipping?
Which is ironic, right?
It is because wholesaling is the low barrier to entry.
And I had no money and it's like...
So wholesaling, for anybody that doesn't know, is basically finding deals, putting a contract on it so that you have the rights to the property and then selling that contract to somebody else who actually wants to do the fix and flip, the rehab. Most of the time. You could apply that label to other asset classes as well, but...
Or landlords, right? Someone who wants to buy it for a rental. But same idea. You're selling the contract.
Yep. And fix and flip is what everybody knows as rehab. This is like the glorified real estate investing thing in the country for anybody, right? It's all the shows are rehab.
All the shows.
Yep. So you did rehab first.
Yeah.
Where did you get money?
Raised it. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I just had people, the funny thing about it is people don't realize how much money they have around them. And like I said, I didn't come from money. I had a very meager, normal blue collar. Like we paid our bills every month, but we didn't have extra, right? So, but when I started getting into the space and started talking about it, just with friends, like, Colby, what are you doing now? Or what's going on? Or how's everything going? Like, I know trust me, I took my eye roll beatings from all my friends, right? Like, oh, Colby lost it all. Oh, right? Like that was definitely there and I felt it and I knew it. And that is probably some of the things that push me the way I'm wired when we talk about that wiring is like, I just kind of want to say.
Yeah.
And I have at this point, like I've definitely created something that I don't have that same feeling.
That was fuck you for those of you that couldn't hear that.
And so I would just say I was talking enough about it that friends and people started being like, I want to get involved. Like, and I had one friend specifically that had an inheritance that just was like, dude, like I have multiple 6 figures here. Like, can I be involved in what you're doing? I don't have time. I have a job, right?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. And it just started. And then you kind of get this reputation or resume and you're able to talk about it. And now this was back in 2000. I mean, we're 7 and 8, right? Meaning social media is not the platform it is today. It was around, but it's not what it is today.
Barely.
Right? Barely. Like when did Facebook? Like 2006 or 7? Something?
Yeah.
So I say that to just say, like, if you just actually talk about the things you're doing and what's cool, and you don't have to have a platform like a podcast, like just talk about it with friends and family. There is so much money out there. Even when you're broke, busted, and disgusted, it's out there. And I don't even know the number, but it's something trillions of dollars in the United States are in retirement accounts. Trillions.
Yeah.
It's just sitting. If you just could show them that there's an asset that they can invest in, they could be a lender. They can get 10% interest or 12% interest or whatever, or they could be an equity partner and own it with you. You just need to know and talk about it outwardly. And that's all I did. And I didn't know what I was doing until I can look back and connect the dots and say, how the hell did I get money? Oh, I was talking about it. I was talking about what I was doing. And people wanted to be a part of it, to the point of the TV shows, right?
Yeah.
Sexy.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that Flip This House sort of launched that era of flipping TV shows and made it sexy. But I think that for a very long time, it's been real estate as a wealth creation strategy has been discussed amongst successful people, written about in books and the go-to entrepreneurial wealth building books. But those shows popularized it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they changed the dynamics for it. And I think that you're right, money being around and talking about it, you have to have the confidence to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that it behooves you to have some idea, and this is a stumbling block for a lot of people, some idea of how to structure those things financially.
Yeah.
And so you rattled off a couple different things that for people that don't invest, throwing out anything financially related is super scary and complicated.
No doubt.
Right? You talk about returns, you talk about different, equity strategies, you talk about funds, and most of those words just break communication because they don't know where to go with them.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you pick that stuff up from Fortune Builders, from a course?
They definitely taught. That's how I was able to educatedly talk about it, is they were able to show me what the model was.
Yeah. Awesome.
And simplify it, right?
Yes.
Saying things like, hey, as a lender, you'd be like the bank.
Nice.
You'd be in first position or second position. Well, banks have a first position loan. Sometimes they have a second or a HELOC. So it helped put it into kind of normal terms, right? And people just got it. And they're just like, I want that kind of return, right? Because, again, this is years ago.
Love it. So why did you switch to flipping?
So I started flipping and I got into wholesaling because the hedge funds came into Phoenix and started buying everything they could, the county courthouse steps. And that's where I was buying a lot of my deals. Is county court was actually the only place I was buying our deals was the county courthouse steps.
Which is when things go into foreclosure.
That's right.
Yep.
And so when you can't buy, that means you can't sell, which means you can't make any money. So it was a brutal transition. Again, adapting through different phases and iterations. And so we realized we needed to go find another way to get deals. Well, there were already people wholesaling in Phoenix. So we started buying from them. We found them, right? We started going out. I started networking. I started going to these little meeting things. There was no meetup.com, right? Called RIA meetings. And we started buying and found some wholesalers.
And for those that are not entrenched in the real estate space, it's real estate investment associations, which are typically local group. They're always local groups, city by city, state by state, that aggregate real estate investors. And they're little business models, but they're to help teach the community how to invest in real estate and share deals.
Yep. And so would go there, network. I'm very easygoing. I can talk to anyone. So it was not scary for me. And I know it is for a lot of people, but that's part of my skill set is I could just go, hey, what's going on? What do you do? What's your business model? And so found enough of them that we started buying again. And then we started to seeing their assignment fees. And again, you're assigning paperwork as a wholesaler, right? So they're not buying it. They're assigning their contract and their terms of that contract over to me for a fee. Some of them are making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on one deal. And it fits our buy box in terms of should we buy it? But then we're seeing all this margin that we could be having on the end and we're taking all the risk. So that's what really, we did, I don't know how many, 10, 20, 30 wholesale deals that we bought before we kind of woke up and why don't we just go get our own?
Why don't we find them ourselves?
And so we went into direct mail, was really, really big back at the time. We went into direct mail really heavy, started getting our own, but we also realized the exit, right? So the long tail of a flip sucks. It can get you into cash cycle issues.
Meaning that you have to sell it at some point and you have to actually do the renovation.
That's right. And so you're buying it, you're rehabbing it, it's not selling it, you bought another one. So you're bringing all this capital, but then the exit is so long on a rehab that like all of a sudden you have no money and you can't pay yourself. And you're like, I'm going to eat top ramen again. Even though I'm making all this money, I'm not yet because it's all stuck in these houses. So that forced our hand to say, okay, we need to start bringing in cash. So what we started doing is we started actually wholesaling it to ourselves. So we could go make $5,000 on the front end, pay ourselves a couple bucks.
Interesting.
Which is $5,000. Sometimes we do $10,000. I mean, if it's a big deal, we'd take $10,000, wholesale it to ourselves, have $5,000 or have $10,000, and then still do the rehab. Which led us into like, well, why are we even dealing with the rehab? Because contractors suck.
Yep.
Why don't we just sell it? Why don't we become the wholesaler? So then it led into that, right?
Yeah. Okay. So some of the mechanics of this are for people that don't wholesale and do the real estate thing. And I hate to, get too granular, but from a wealth perspective or from a startup perspective, whether you're doing this and you're brand new trying to figure it out, or you are a business person that has a successful business and you're looking for a strategy to do it, understanding the mechanics is valuable. So when you're looking for real estate deals, you have a few paths. One is you can work with a realtor that works with investors. That's one path. And that's, I think, the starting point for a lot of people. The other is you could look for wholesalers. And these are people that have figured out how to go find the properties. But like you just said, they don't want to rehab them, right? They don't want to deal with it, or they don't have the skill set, expertise, capital, et cetera. They find the deals and sell them and make a little margin. The third is that you figure out how the wholesalers are finding the properties, right? And your answer to that was direct mail. Initially. And so that's basically saying, that's being very clear back to your 5 principles, right? Being very clear on the outcome that you're after. And in this case, that means being very clear on the criteria. And you reference it as the box that you'll buy in, the criteria that you're going to use to invest. And then just fucking hunting, blanketing everybody saying, hey, are you open to selling your property, until the people come through. And then you look at whatever the numbers are, 10, 20 people respond to the direct mail and say, I'm interested. Of that, one of them or two of them has a deal that might fit the box. All fair so far?
All fair.
So you did the wholesaling thing for a while. How much of this did you do before you got into education? And where were you from like a financial perspective at this point?
I mean, I don't know if I could give you an exact benchmark, but we were making well into high 6 figures, I would guess, before I got into the education space. So 2014, a good friend, Sean Terry, he and I just were both in Phoenix and we did a bunch of deals together. And he, was just like, bro, start a podcast, right? And I was listening to his podcast at the time. And I was like, dude, I want to do this. This is fun. And the history of that for me personally, just to get to know me a little bit better. As a kid, I thought I was going to be a teacher. So my grandmother was a teacher, then a principal, and then like one of those school district types, right? Where they would start to help the school system. So I'd tell my grandma, I'm going to be a teacher, grandma. And she was all proud. And then the older I got, I was like, they don't make any money, right?
This is true.
And then so I told her I was going to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And then I realized how much school they had to go to, specifically psychiatrist. It's like, that's not quite as much fun. But I always had this teacher, go-giver, coach. I was a big athlete. And so from athletics, I would get into coaching or refereeing. I was always a part of that, right? And so that was just kind of ingrained in me. I always wanted to give. So in 2014, I thought that would be a cool way to do it. Go create a podcast. No one really did it back in 2014. It's still around. I still do episodes on the science of flipping. And that was how it started. It wasn't with intention. It was just about giving. And I find that more and more in my life, that the more I'm willing to just give with no real like request or like agenda, let's call it, the more things work out for me, right? And the bigger plays happen. And so that's all it was. And from there, people would hit me up. Hey, dude, can you coach me? Whatever. And so it kind of turned into a consulting business, like me teaching one person or whatever. Now we teach thousands throughout the year in the science flipping community. And we have 5 to 8 calls a week. But it started because of the podcast. And again, social media wasn't that prevalent. I mean, 2014, it was more for sure.
Definitely.
But I just saw the podcast to be able to go national, right? Because I really didn't know the power of social media then. But I realized Apple podcasts were getting really big. It was kind of the key thing. I was like, that'd be cool. right? And it was a way to fulfill this desire or feeling I wanted to give back to others because I didn't really know how else to do it. I didn't know how to build a coaching business or anything like that, right? I didn't have a mentor teaching me that. So that's how it all happened. 2014, kind of more consulting. Now has grown into quite a large, amazing community. We focus on one first thing is find the deal. How the hell do you do that? Right? And then you focus on analyzing the deal, and then you focus on the exit. And that's what I call being dynamic. Do you wholesale it? Do you fix and flip it? Or do you keep it as a rental? Right? And if you can understand that, like I give all my community members my actual buy box. Like I said early in the episode, I buy 2 to 5 properties a week. I want that to be 5 a week, and then I want it to be 10 a week, etc. But I say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to find them. And then I'm also going to tell you I will likely buy it if it fits my buy box. So they have it. So they don't have to guess on what should I offer. They literally just type in 4 numbers.
Yeah.
And it goes green or it goes yellow or it goes red. If it goes red, that's a hard no. Yellow, maybe. Green, yes.
Okay. So let's talk about real estate strategy. So you've built this significant education platform to teach people how to invest in real estate. And you talked about the elements of a dynamic real estate investor, which is fix and flip, wholesale, or hold, right? For appreciation. When do you do what? What is the approach that you teach? Because there are people that the cash flow is the important thing.
That's right.
There are people that, and that's really the buy and hold, if they can generate some cash flow. Some people, it's a job. They're doing it as a job to create revenue.
That's right.
And some people, the buy and hold also is the appreciation side of it, right? So what's the mix and how do you look at it?
Yeah, great question. The interesting thing is you can do all 3 at one time with any home that you want, right? And so the BRRRR model, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but for the audience, you buy it, rehab it, refinance, or rent it and refinance. That is the model I use to keep my rentals. I told you earlier when I was rehabbing, I was wholesaling it to myself. So you could wholesale into a rehab and then tell yourself, screw it, I'm going to keep it.
Meaning that you buy it with one entity, you sell it to another entity and take a bunch of money out.
You contracted with one entity, you buy it in another entity where the wholesale fee comes from. And then you remodel it and do all that. You get it tenanted and then you go to the bank and you refi and put it into a long-term loan.
Love it.
Now, do I think that, so I'm just kind of highlighting like actually you could do all 3 models with one property. Wholesale it, rehab it, and then actually just keep it versus selling it on MLS. Because the BRRRR model specifically, you're rehabbing it anyways. And I really mean rehabbing. I'm not talking about just painting the cabinets white. I'm saying you remodel the home. I remodel every home I buy. Why? Because it gives me the exits. Do I want to fix and flip it and sell it? Or do I actually just want to hold it? Which is what we're talking about in this example. It gives me that option. If I want the option, now I have it. And so we, as a moment in time, as we're doing this recording, the interest rates have been going up, specifically not anymore, but they were over the last 12 months. Okay, well, it made it a little bit more difficult as they were going up when I'm trying to keep a property and I go from 6.5% to 7.5% interest. All of a sudden, I'm going to be netting like $80 a month on a rental. It's not that appealing, right? Okay, but I have $38,000 of equity in this damn thing after commissions and costs and all that. I'm just going to flip it then. So now I have both exit strategies that I can use. And so I keep my buy box. It must exit both models, right? So I'm buying a lot through North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Georgia. I like Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Dallas. I like, it just tends to be more of a flip market for me, right? It's tough to get a rental there. So when do you do what? It really just, you said something about cash flow. I tell all my community members, look at your bank account. Do you need some money? How's it looking? Is it pretty dry? Flip it. Well, specifically wholesale it, right? Wholesale it. Now, if you're looking okay and you see a project, and I say you have to 5x your wholesale fee to make it worth it to fix and flip, because it is brain damage. I am bald for a reason, right? I've done enough of these damn things and I still do them because I like torture apparently. But if you could wholesale it for 10 grand, you need to be making 50 to rehab it. Otherwise, it's just then wholesale it, right? But then, the buy and hold thing, for most people, they think they don't have the money to buy and hold. And this is another key thing that I tell people and teach people. There's a lot of money out there, right? Like I literally just had my mastermind, part of my community. I have an inner circle. There's 27 people there for this one in Vegas a couple weeks ago. I told them to do this secret thing about make a very specific post into their social media, specifically Facebook. And dude, one guy got 17 people saying, hey, I'm interested in talking to you. He's like, I had no idea I'd have this many people want to lend me money. It's like, because you don't know what I know, right? And this is what I'm teaching them. And I say that because he can go buy rentals with those people. You don't need your own money. All my portfolio, the tens of millions of dollars that I have, and one day I should actually accumulate how much I have. There's not a dollar of mine in any of them. Not one. But I know how to raise money and I know how to make it benefit both sides. I add value to both sides. There's a lot of people with retirement accounts. The money's just sitting there and likely losing money in the stock market. Likely. But then there's also a lot of people that have money in their bank. They're scared of this, they're scared of that. Well, if their money's protected by the actual asset and something did go wrong, at least they have the asset, right?
Yeah.
And so it really is a function of their bank account. And then knowing how to buy rentals. Everyone in the universe should be buying at least a rental a year.
Okay. So for you personally on your entrepreneurial journey, super heavy on your own investments, podcast starts, but now you've got an education platform that's generating revenue. Which business model do you like? Do you like the real estate investment model more?
I will do real estate for the rest of my life. Forever and always.
And what about the education side?
I feel like I will. I think just like anything, it'll have iterations of it. Could change a little bit. I don't know how as a moment in time because we're very heavy into the community. From this, internally, we built out kind of a technology internally for my real estate business, which started to get some eyes from out. People would ask me and I would coach them on what we're doing. So like in these masterminds, I'd say, here's what we're doing. Here's the technology behind it. And all of a sudden people were like, oh, I want that. Well, it started to get some noise. And now very, very, very recently, and I don't know where this is going to go, I've gotten some interest from some very, very large people, let's call them, that I didn't even know I'd be in this space at all. And it is very real, very fast. And so now I'm in the tech space to some extent. We'll see how that goes, where it goes. I don't know. However, you probably know, most of your listeners would know that it can be a fun, wild ride. And there's a whole lot of commas involved if it's done right. And it wasn't my agenda, quite frankly.
Software side of things?
Yeah, software. Yeah. And again, it goes back to all I was trying to do is fix a problem in my own business. And I fixed it. And then I shared with people what I did to fix the problem. And that's it. And I was just giving value to them saying, hey, if you have this problem, here's what I did to fix my problem. So if you have it, fix it. Right. And again, like I say, the more I just give and show and offer value without any agenda, it always circles up. Now, again, I don't know where this is going to go. So I don't want to be speculative or anything, but right now it's a very fun, cool, very hot and heavy thing that we are dealing with very fast because there's players that are like, this needs to run, this needs to go now. Here's 10 more players. We're having Zoom calls every single day. Right before this episode, I was on a very important Zoom call with people who have just had very large 10-figure exits. So it's like fast and fun. And it also could go nowhere. And it just is a cool thing that I can offer my community. And that's fine too. Because it really does fix the problem.
I love it. So I know we've got a cap on time here, but I have a couple other questions. One of them is very pertinent to this moment, which is we're in the beginning of 2024. We have had what we'll call a depressed real estate market in the last year or so as a result of skyrocketing interest rates relative to our life cycle.
That's right.
Right? There's investments to be had regardless of what cycle you're in.
That's right.
How do you think about good markets and bad markets in real estate and how it impacts your actions?
You just adjust, right? So like I said, I have a buy box I give my community. You just adjust the interest rate. You adjust the holding cost. You just adjust. That's it. You adapt, right? The reason why I've been able to last so long when so many, to your other point, like people fall out of favor, right? And it's large part because they don't know what they're doing or they're so stoic and hard-headed that this is the way, it crumbles on them, right? Like if you don't pivot, if you don't adapt, if you don't adjust, it'll hurt you, right? And so in this season, like I said, I have 2 exit strategies. So if I'm buying something and I didn't adjust right, so at first we were underwriting at 6.5%, then we had to go to 7.5%, then we had to go to 8.5%. Now I think we've cooled off at this point, meaning I think it'll start to slowly trickle down all those things. But if it works at 8.5%, it's a pretty good hedge. So it's going to work. And then if we have our, 40, 50 grand worth of net profit at the end of then great. We're just going to buy it because one of these is going to work for me. Make sense?
Yeah.
So it's hedging your exit, which is why I always want people to either wholesale, fix and flip, or buy and hold. is because if you hedge with at least two of those, you're going to be good. So I don't care. Now listen, we're old enough to have been kids, but in the late 80s, the interest rates were in the high teens or low 20s. My grandfather was developing real estate back then, which did not give me there's no connection to that. That was just at random. He was. When I was kind of complaining one day, he's 94, right? He was like, Justin, when I was developing this $2 million home back in the 80s, the interest rate for someone to buy it was 18.9%.
Yeah.
Owner occupied. That was not hard money. He's like, stop bitching. Right? Like 7.5% is not high. And if you look at the data, there's a map or a chart over the last 50 years of interest rates. Like we're still in a very low rate, respectively. Like it's not 3%, but that was just ridiculous.
Yeah. That's why I said in our life cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's jarring to us right now, especially coming off of 2.25%, 3% rates. But like you said, relative to the 80s.
And math is math.
Yep.
If you protect yourself and are conservative and you use a spreadsheet, it just becomes math. Right? Now, the thing that I'm going to be watching out for is income is not raising at the same rate as appreciation and values of homes. But people are going to have to live places. This is why I'm actually choosing the places I'm buying, is because right now there's still favorable pricing. A family could go buy a home for $220,000. We just sold one. $220,000, beautiful home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,700 square feet. Families can afford that $220,000, right? And so affordable housing, not in the Section 8 manner, but just like in the United States, I'm focusing on them because there will be a mass migration that way as the economy is going to, in my opinion, our economy is going to be fine. It is fine. It's going to continue to be fine. There is no big hurdle. Like you're in Miami right now. You go down to Brickell City Center and there's a whole lot of people in Louis, Gucci, and Prada, right? I mean, there's a lot of money flowing right now.
No question. Okay. So when we started talking a couple days ago about recording, I was met with a conversation around being on your podcast.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning. And you were very protective about it because your podcast has gotten a ton of attention as of late. Tell me a little bit about, and to which I responded, no, I want you to come talk to the Beyond a Million folks. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm just getting bombarded with requests right now.
Totally. I want to say I'm sorry again because I think about the convo. I was like, God, that was douchey. So I'm sorry.
That was totally fine. But it then becomes a discussion point,
Sure.
right? So tell me about the podcast. Tell me what the draw is for people.
Yeah.
And what you do with it. And then I want to talk kind of mechanics of how you built it and stuff. But
Totally. So the podcast is a little bit of a passion project. A little while ago, several years ago, actually, I had this idea. And actually to this moment, as we're recording, Spotify still has an old version of it. So I organically launched this Entrepreneur DNA. And unfortunately, I don't know why Spotify can't take it down, but you'll see because I have hair. So you'll know the difference.
Okay.
But so I always had this. And as I've grown in business and my network has increased, I'm like, I need to do something with this passion. Like this is legit going to help people and serve people and be something that people are going to want or hear. And it's because I'm now getting to a place with the platform to have very notorietable, very well-to-do, very wealthy, very successful people that I can help spotlight for listeners. And I can go not specific to real estate, but I can go to business and entrepreneurship and what it really takes. Because as you know, like I say all the time, it's not always puppy dogs and rainbows, right? And there's something a little wrong with us entrepreneurs that, to do what we need to do to get what we want to go get, it's not easy. And people think it is because they see the edited version on social media.
Right.
But that's why I talk about my losses as much as I can. Like, oh, I just ate shit. Like I just sold a duplex 2 months ago, maybe. I had to cut a check to close it. I lost money. I didn't care because the asset was not what I wanted. And I was willing to lose money. It happens, right? It's not always, look how much money I made on this flip, right? So I had this passion project and I started asking people like the Grant Cardones or the Ari Rastegars or, Sean Whaley and I have been friends for years. And if I did this thing, would you jump on? Oh, yeah, bro. Right. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm in. And so I started recording and finally I got my shit together enough to say, hey, let's go launch it. And so I essentially hired a full-blown marketing team to help me make sure that I'm going to achieve greatness with this. And it's not just going to be another podcast. Because no one needs just another podcast, right?
Yeah.
So I have a whole team that for the guests, they get cut up snippets. It gives them all their social media posts that they could want to post and share and give for the guests. But then also like it helps get the podcast up and running and gaining notoriety. And as of yesterday, we hit number 10 in business and entrepreneurship in the nation. So I'm very excited about that.
Sick.
And it's a combination of my marketing team and I think the guests essentially, right? And the content. People are like, oh, this is badass shit going on. Like Justin's not just saying, hey, go out and win, rah, rah, right? It's good stuff. So
if you had to distill a few tips, what do you think the top 1, 2, 3 elements are that allow it to be, or that have gotten it to be top 10 business podcasts?
Yeah. So hiring a marketing team focusing on this one vertical, not everything else, it's got to be part of it, right? Because this is their only agenda, right? In navigating, there's some secret science of how this all plays out, which I'm unaware of, but they're focusing on it all the time to hit the algorithms, to do the things, to like I just got Apple somehow has picked up whatever's happening. So they put me in top and new podcasts or whatever in some of their rankings. So they are just focusing on it, right? And then the other part is like offering real fucking value. Like give the real shit, what people really want to know about what we do and how we do it. And again, not the puppy dogs and rainbows. And let's talk about the best thing you've ever done. No. It's like, you know, when I'm talking about Brad Lee and we're talking about how he's been divorced and how marriages aren't working out and like the reality of this shit, right? Like Brad's not coming in talking about how great Brad is, which he is great. But, you know, I'm coming in hot about the commitment it takes to be a great father, a great husband, and a great business owner all at the same time, and essentially having a child or a marriage of a business, right? And how do you do that? And how do you split yourself to do all these things? And he's like, bro, when I was young, I didn't. I fucking got divorced over it. I couldn't figure it out, right? And so providing great content with the right people is a recipe that I have found, right? And so hopefully we keep this run and I'm going to keep spending into my own team. And I think some of this, I'm at a place in my life financially where I can spend into a team to make that work. Some people might not be there and I can respect it. And hopefully at least they can get the right content out there. Again, offering value. It's got to be immense value. Not just for my listeners, but for your listeners if you come on or anyone comes on, right? And then to offer value to you, like, hey, it's going to go on my YouTube. Brad will be on my YouTube. It'll be on my podcast. It'll be on my Instagram. Brad's notoriety based around my audience now can help fulfill what you're looking to do and the agenda there, right? And so just making sure the whole recipe is value for everyone, I think has been part of it. Where I didn't have that initially. Right? Like I didn't have a team splicing video and making edits and giving the raw footage to the other person and all this other stuff. Yeah. Right. It was just like, let's record something and then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for people, you know, we're now, unlike 2014, we're now in an era 10 years later where it is a tremendously crowded space. Yeah. And it's tremendously attractive to people because the idea of getting attention has become so popularized and people understand that is eyeballs that can be converted.
Yep.
So, and the barrier to entry is low, right? You can upload a podcast to any of these distribution platforms. You can record with very low cost equipment, get a budget thing out. But I think one of the key things that you just said was you had the marketing team there.
Yeah.
And if you were going to do it, you wanted to fucking do it.
Yep.
And the number one thing that crushes fledgling entrepreneurs is a fractured laser beam.
I love that. Yeah.
They try to hit so many things at the same time. And I'm totally guilty of it all the time.
Me too.
I have a giant sign on my wall that says focus because I need the reminder in the office to drop all of the other things and focus on the thing that's relevant. So if you're going to do the podcast, you better know that it's going to be energy.
That's it.
Right? And so you have to commit to doing it.
Totally. I couldn't agree with more. And it's funny that you say that is because anytime I see I'm not getting any, not just in the podcast, but like things aren't really working, it's because I'm fractioned. I'm not really extremely focused. And I heard this years and years ago from one of my first mentors. Extreme focus gets extreme results. And that was my intention with this, right? Is Science of Flipping is still a great podcast and is there. And we still do episodes every week. But how I started that versus this with intention and knowing the vertical when we had that conversation, like, hey, bro, I'm getting crushed on, it's because I set out with intention on what I'm going to do, what I'm going to make this, how this is going to be a value add to you, the guest, me, my audiences, and then the people listening. it was just with incredible intention, right? And I kept that intention, and I still have that intention. And so now I have something that has become pretty darn special, and I appreciate it. And I think it's really cool. And when you say what happens with education, I mean, it could just be the Joe Rogan style, like, I just build a fucking podcast that's so good and delivers so much value all the time. That's where I go in the transition of where I go with education. I don't know the answer at this second, but maybe. I don't know if I'll ever be Joe Rogan, but that's all right.
Well, you'd have to
do something really special.
Chop your legs down about 10 inches.
Yeah. Throw some muscle on.
Yeah. Awesome. Justin, where do you want to point people? If they want to find out more about you, where should they go?
The Justin Colby is the best handle. Instagram specifically, I rock out as much content on there as possible. And then Justin Colby TV would be a great place if you just want to get to know more about me. I have hundreds and hundreds of videos on justincolby.tv, and subscribe and just learn more about me and see if I'm your vibe or not. And either way, I wish everyone the best.
Love it. Justin, awesome to see you, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.